Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365 and National Hog Farmer. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Our guest today is with the ARS-USDA Livestock Issue Research Unit in Lubbock, Texas. She is Dr. Nicole Sanchez. Welcome, Dr. Sanchez. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
So, Nicole, you, along with some of your USDA colleagues and researchers at Texas Tech University, have recently taken a look at a viable, less invasive alternative for continuous temperature measurement in weaned pigs. First of all, why is this important, and what advantages does this method offer?
One of our main goals with the Livestock Issues Research Unit is to improve animal health and well-being through reducing stress and seeing how stress influences the immune response. Measuring body temperature is very important, not only for animals, but also for humans, as it's typically one of the first signs of sickness. And so being able to use and have viable and accurate ways to measure temperature is very important. Current methods for measuring body temperature in pig are either invasive, requiring the surgical placement of temperature loggers within the body cavity, or they require frequent and repeated handling of pigs in order to pick them up and measure rectal temperature. And we know from our work and work of others that this can cause stress to the animal. This new method that our research unit has developed is much less invasive, as it involves the placement of a temperature logger under the skin within pigs. And this is placed in the crease between the abdomen and the hind leg. And so this is much less invasive. And the work from our research study shows that this temperature measured subcutaneously here in what we call the flank is very similar to what we have found measured from more invasive methods, such as placement of temperature loggers within the abdominal cavity. And so it's a very much less invasive tool that we can use for our research.
So current temperature measurements require, as you said, the handling and the restraint of the pig, and that causes stress. How detrimental to pig health and performance can that stress be? Is that something that's been measured, and is that all that significant?
Yes. So frequent or repeated handling of pigs can be stressful. We know that from work that we've done and work that others have done in looking at stress. So the extent of stress and the subsequent effects that it has either on pig performance, on pig health, depends on how frequent the stress is, the duration of stress, and whether the stress is in conjunction with other stressors such as weaning, castration, transportation. A lot of our work is in the early wean pig, and we know that period is stressful. You know, they've been taken from their dam, new environment, new feed, and so that's a very stressful period. And so if this is the area that you're focusing on, then it can be detrimental. There's been studies mainly looking at serum cortisol concentrations, which is one of the main stress hormones. And we know that if cortisol is elevated for an extended period of time, it can negatively impact not only performance, but as well as the health of the pig, and may inhibit the ability of that pig to respond to disease.
Now, technology currently exists, I believe, to allow for the measurement of rectal and vaginal temperature in the absence of handling cattle and sheep. So we've got it over on the cattle and sheep side, these kinds of tools. But your work is the first that's been done is in pigs, and is that correct?
That is correct.
So how similar is the technology that we have over on cattle and sheep to what you're doing in pigs? Is it just taking that technology and applying it over, or is there a big difference in how temperature should be measured, is measured, and the methods that you're looking at?
Yes. So the logger that we use for some of our temperature measuring in cattle and sheep is actually the same temperature logger that we're using in pigs. So the difference is how it is attached to the animal. So we have developed indwelling temperature loggers for both rectal and vaginal temperature in cattle as well as in sheep. Our rectal temperature are attached to mounts that are attached to the tail, while our vaginal temperature devices for both sheep and for female cattle are placed on a hormone-free controlled internal drug release device, or a CEDAR. And these are placed within the animal. And so these animals are able to move around normal maintenance behaviors while we continuously measure body temperature. We have tried unsuccessfully to create similar rectal temperature mounts to be used in pigs. Unfortunately, their tail and their anatomy has not allowed us to be successful in that endeavor. And that has led us to look at the subcutaneous temperature in pigs. So we know that there are other methods for measuring temperature in pigs other than rectal temperature. There are boluses that can be ingested. Unfortunately, with these is that you're limited to the time that bolus is within the body cavity. And so this could be as little as 24 hours. Also, from work that we know that has been done with these boluses that have been used in the rumen of cattle, we know that temperature can be influenced by the ingestion of both food and water. And so it may not give you an accurate reading. For many years, our lab has been very successful at looking at body temperature within the abdominal cavity. We call this intraperitoneal temperature. However, it's a surgical method. You have to surgically place the logger within the body cavity. Our research, we care a lot about the animals and their well-being. And so we allow the animals to recover from this procedure, but that can also extend the length of our studies. So with the new method that our research has developed, it is much less invasive. It's the placement of a logger underneath the skin. It's very quick. It can be done in conjunction with other methods that we use, such as pulling blood samples. And it's very similar to what would be like the placement of a implant in cattle or the placement of a microchip, although our logger is a little bit bigger than a microchip. And so it's very much less invasive. Doesn't require nearly as long of a recovery, if any, and it's just much easier for the animal.
So once it's implanted, is the temperature, it's continuously being recorded? Is it like on an hourly basis? How is it tracked? And, what is the ideal time for tracking that? How many times do you have to look at temperature throughout the day in a pig?
So the temperature loggers that we use, we program them to collect temperature every 5 minutes. So we're in a research setting. We know that temperature can change quickly in response to changes in disease and immune function and things like that. And so we are interested in those acute changes. And so we measure temperature quite frequently. Now for those that are not interested in research or the acute changes, it can be collected much less frequently. I would consider measuring it at least daily if you're looking to catch disease early, so that those animals can be identified and treated. The important part is with measuring body temperature is making sure that it is measured consistently. We know that there's a lot of natural factors that can affect body temperature. So differences in sex. We know that males versus females usually have a greater body temperature. We know that there's differences in breed. There's differences in temperament. And so these can affect that. But stress actually can affect body temperature as well. And stress hormones change throughout the day. So they're typically greater in the morning. And so in order to alleviate these differences, it's really important that if it's measured temperature is measured daily, that it's measured at a consistent time.
Is there a good time, or it just needs to be a consistent time?
I think it needs to be consistent. So if you're processing animals at 8 o'clock in the morning, measure at 8 o'clock every day, because we know that cortisol decreases. And you also have the influence of environmental temperature. And so if environmental temperature is increasing during the day, you're going to see changes in body temperature. And just to keep that in mind and how those things may influence what you're measuring.
Good point. So now you mentioned the flank you found to be the best spot for the placement of the measurement tool. Do you think there's a specific reason for that? Why that might be the ideal location in pigs?
So I think there's two reasons for this. The first is blood flow. You're talking about the hind leg, very large muscle or group of muscles there. And so you've got really good blood flow. And the second reason is it's closest to the abdominal cavity, so the closest to the core body. And I think that this is why we're seeing that. We actually, in our study, looked at two other locations, subcutaneous locations. The first was what we call the shoulder. And so it was in between the crease between the abdominal cavity and the front leg. And we also placed a logger behind the ear. Because previous research has suggested that might be a good place. However, both of these subcutaneous locations had lower body temperature compared to what we measured at the flank as well as within the abdominal cavity. And we think this is because there's a lot more heat loss occurring at these two locations. And so they were measuring lower body temperature. And And so for this reason, the flank actually was a very good, it correlated very well with what we saw with core body temperature.
Certainly understand the need for the researching be able to measure on a consistent basis. But what about on the farm? What does this development mean for hog producers?
So measurement of body temperature is very important, not just for researchers, but also for the hog producer. It's very important to being able to identify those sick pigs. And it's important to have accurate and reliable methods to measure body temperature. So the new technique that our research unit developed is a very valuable tool for research, as well as for healthcare professionals. And it's actually already been extremely valuable to our research unit. We have changed to start using this method in our studies. And within our studies, we are looking at ways to reduce stress and to improve the immune system. And these tools are going to be valuable to producers. They're going to allow producers to maintain the health of their herds. And so while the current method that we've developed may not have a direct impact on producers right now, it's a very important step in providing tools to the researchers and to the hog producers, as well as a next step in potentially developing real-time technology so that producers can and have the ability to measure body temperature and observe their pigs in real time.
So they might be able to just implant themselves and then be able to monitor their herds. Is that what you're saying?
We hope to get to that point in the future. I know that the technology exists for smaller animals. The radio telemetry, it's a bit over my head. But like I said, we know that technology exists for smaller animals, but developing it for larger livestock, such as cattle and swine, is very important. It would give us the ability to, set thresholds and say, oh, this animal hit this temperature. Let's pull that animal and check it for disease. And if you're able to pull that animal out of the pen, then hopefully you're preventing the spread of disease to other pigs in the pen and can halt any disease spread and maintain the health of our herds.
So what about next steps? Are there some additional research projects that need to be done? What's in the works? Anything?
So there's a couple of things that we're working on. The first is we are continuing our work with Texas Tech University, our collaboration there, and we are trying to see if we can use our modified CEDARs, these hormone-free controlled internal drug release devices, to place our temperature logger in and measure body temperature continuously in our gilts and our sows. We think that we can do that. We hope to test that within the next year. The other thing is continuing working with collaborators to see if we can set up and develop this real-time technology to measure body temperature to where we can see it. Our loggers right now, they're almost like jump drives is what I describe them. They measure body temperature and they store it. And then we have to download the data. And so being able to develop that technology to where we can access that body temperature from a computer, from our homes, and be able to monitor the health of our pigs, that definitely is an important next step that we're looking into at the moment.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Nicole Sanchez of ARS-USDA out of Lubbock, Texas. We thank you for your time today and good luck with your future research. Likewise, we thank you all for joining us here. We appreciate you being with us. Until next time, for Feedstuffs 365 and National Hog Farmer, I'm Sarah Muirhead.